Our next panelist is Kenichi Okamoto. Kenichi Okamoto is trained as a statistician and completed his PhD in biology in 2011. After years of itinerant postdoctoring, he was nomadic in his science, right? He now teaches at the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota, which the Dominicans run. I'm an ex-Jesuit, so I don't know if I'm happy about that. We have to talk about that. And his theme for today is, Kenichi will speak on a theoretical ecology of the class struggle. He's getting some beats right now, so once the beats tune down, Kenichi, you can lay us down with that Twin Cities rap, brother!
Sure, hopefully that works. So thank you again, Dr. Ibarra-Colom, for the introduction and for having me. This is a real honor. And yes, as Dr. Ibarra-Colom mentioned, I am Kenichi Okamoto. I'm a mathematical biologist currently employed at the University of St. Thomas. So we're a Catholic liberal arts college in St. Paul, Minnesota. We are actually run by the Archdiocese, so hopefully there will be some peace between the different factions of the church as it is. So today I want to talk to you about first what I mean by theoretical or mathematical ecology, and introduce then the concept of the class struggle, focusing in particular on how labor is exploited under capitalism, and finally discuss how the two are connected, particularly through the lens of the spread of novel diseases, including vaccine-resistant coronaviruses, which was the topic of the chapter I work with Rob on in this collection. So first of all, mathematical ecology gets a bad rep, even among fellow travelers. Here's a quote from the great eco-syndicalist Murray Bookchin in the 1960s about my chosen profession. Quote, ecology, narrowly conceived as one of the biological sciences, is often reduced to a variety of biometrics in which field workers focus on food chains and statistical studies of animal population. Now, mere, quote unquote, biometricians like I have tried to expand this way of seeing the world to include, for example, the spread of human pathogens. Humans, after all, are animals, and our pathogens like SARS-CoV-2 and the malaria parasite, well, take energy from us, so are part of our food chain. So yes, I work in, quote, a variety of biometrics focusing on food chain and statistical studies of animal populations. And to be sure, Murray Bookchin may have anticipated this response and was not impressed. So his quote is saying is there's also an ecology of health that would hardly offend the sensibilities of the American Medical Association. So what I want to point out is a role for theoretical ecology that doesn't seem, well, so genteel and removed. And we can actually ground this biometrics in the class struggle more broadly conceived. So that leads me to define this a little bit more precisely. So the class struggle, in particular, the exploitation of labor. So as many of you probably know, the labor that people like you and I engage in generates a huge amount of value. But when we scale to the whole economy, the capitalists pay us a fraction of that value in the form of wages and pocket a good share of the value we generate to themselves. This is politely called profits. In short, capitalists try to exploit us more. A less polite word for this is exploitation, so let's split the difference and call it surplus value. A consequence of this accumulation is the cost to workers. And here I draw on the work of a rarely cited paper by Professor Richard England of the University of New Hampshire in the Journal of Economic Research that uses an explicitly Marxian framework to think about the problem. Long story short, this creates a crisis in production as the cost of such externalities are shifted onto the exploited classes, i.e. working people like you and me. So that gives us a framework to think about the class struggle more broadly. And there's ecological theory, there's the class struggle. So how can the two come together? At the end of the day, what Professor England, using Marxist framework, was able to operationalize and argue was that the health risks to the working class are intrinsically tied to capitalism and the logic of capital accumulation more specifically. And our relationship to diseases are no exception. And so let's look at the use of, for instance, antimicrobial drugs in agriculture. Effectively, it lowers the production costs, that is to say, labor inputs, by quite a bit. And so I do my biometrics, as the Bookchins of the world dismissively call it. And sure enough, that can be demonstrated to lead to an increase in antimicrobial resistant pathogens in our healthcare system. Another case study I'd like to point out is the same theory with land use that Dr. Wallace has gone to quite a bit of work to convey, is that In effect, my modeling confirms how the risk of animal-human transmission becomes a cost borne by workers as animal-human contacts increase, like, for instance, in SARS-CoV-2. So my case is this, that theoretical ecology can illustrate how we workers bear the brunt of the extraction of our surplus value. And I want this quote by Lord Kelvin. You might know him from degrees Kelvin fame in science. So that's when the 0 degrees Kelvin is when you have absolute frozen temperatures. He's a physicist who made his name also working on gravitational fields and transatlantic cables. And Dr. Kelvin said this, that often say that when you can measure what you are speaking about and express it in numbers, you know something about it. But when you cannot measure it, when you cannot express it in numbers, your knowledge is of a meager and unsatisfactory kind. And so folks like Murray Bookchin might dismiss what I do as a variety of biometrics, but in this way, I think we can re-envision a theoretical ecology that becomes part of the class struggle, exposing the consequences and ways through which capitalist exploitation materializes. So today, I've introduced what theoretical ecology is, how workers are exploited, and claim how we can think about the two together. And I've tried to argue that, well, maybe we can do better. Thank you.